Hello, it's Alex and welcome to Hey Little Thrifter. Today I'm going to be talking about all of the books I read in January. I read 7 books total, mostly horror or horror related, and first up was The Auctioneer by Joan Samson. This was a 4-star read for me, a really great example of quiet horror. It's about a family who live in this small farming community, and a newcomer moves to town and starts these auctions, and he is asking for donations from all of the townsfolk, but things get out of hand, and no matter how much they give, he always wants to take more. I have a separate review video for this if you want to hear more of my thoughts about it. I'll leave the video linked in the description below, but yeah, this was really good. I definitely recommend it. Next up, I read Bunny by Mona Awad. This is about a character called Samantha who is on an MFA programme at a very prestigious school, and she's the only one in her class on a scholarship. There are 4 other girls in her class and they have their own little clique. They all call each other Bunny and they're a very tight-knit group, and she's the outsider in more ways than one. Before I go any further, I will say I didn't really like this one. I ended up rating it 2 stars. Just wasn't my thing, I guess. But the reason I picked it up was because the premise sounded intriguing. It seemed to have some horror themes going on, and especially on Bookstagram I'd seen a lot of 5-star reviews going around, so it piqued my interest and I thought I'd give it a shot. And I ended up buddy reading this with my friend Emily over at Page Turns. I thought it had some really interesting ideas, but they felt very half-formed, and overall the story was really messy. Samantha starts off as quite a sympathetic character, but she soon becomes pretty unlikable, and that just didn't work for me in the overall grand scheme of things, because all of the other characters are also unlikable. So the fact that she also fell into that category, it felt like, who do I really care about anymore? And none of them were unlikable in that interesting or fascinating way that made me want to read about them. I just didn't really care. Another thing is, I would not class this as horror. Apparently a lot of people on Goodreads would disagree with me because horror seems to be the top genre that it has been kind of tagged as, but I would have to disagree with that. It does include some horror themes, but it seems to kind of keep them at a distance. I think it's a kind of book that thinks it's more clever than it actually is, and definitely wouldn't want to stoop so low as being in the horror genre. I think it has much grander views of itself than that, which kind of rubbed me the wrong way if you couldn't tell. But anyway, yeah, this was some good ideas, poorly executed. I rated it 2 stars. I would class this more as just a contemporary novel, which just isn't really my thing. There's nothing wrong with it, it's just not my personal cup of tea. And it's funny because one of my goals for 2020 was to not get sucked into the hype surrounding popular books, and yeah, I failed on literally my 2nd book of the year. But hopefully that will help my decision making in future. Anyway, after that I wanted to pick up something that I knew I was going to enjoy, and what better choice than a point horror book. I went with The Snowman by R.L. Stine because it seemed wintry, and yeah, this was fun. It is about a teenage girl called Heather. She lives with her aunt and uncle and has done ever since she was a kid, and her parents died in an accident, and her uncle is really mean and treats her really poorly, and she quite frankly hates him, and she has a lot of kind of daydreaming fantasies about him meeting some untimely end in a horrific accident. And there's even a scene near the beginning of the book where she's in the car with her boyfriend, they're having a little snog session, and she's daydreaming about her uncle dying while she's kissing her boyfriend, which I thought was hilarious. Anyway, she has a part-time job working as a waitress at a local diner, and one night that she's working there she meets this mysterious boy that has moved to town. He has white hair and she chats with him and he introduces himself as the Snowman. And even though Heather has a boyfriend, she kind of brushes him off to go out with the Snowman instead. But of course, does she really know this guy? Who is he? What's his deal? And yeah, I won't say where the story goes, but it was a pretty unique and interesting one, so I did appreciate that. I enjoyed R.L. Stine's writing here and the characters. I thought it was a fun story overall and I rated it 3 stars. Then my need for vintage YA horror hadn't quite been satisfied, so I picked up book 1 of the Power series by Jessie Harris. This one is called The Possession, and it's a series about a teenage psychic called Mackenzie Gold, and this isn't one that I read as a kid, but it's one that has kind of been on my radar for a while, and I picked up all 8 books in the series I think last year sometime, so yeah, I was really happy to finally pick up book 1 and it was great. I really enjoyed it. So the story in The Possession is she and her best friend Lilith, known as Lilycat, are shopping at a flea market for costumes for a party, and a shawl that Lilycat buys as part of her costume ends up being possessed somehow by some vengeful spirit, and whenever Lilycat wears the shawl, her personality is taken over by this spirit. And Mackenzie knows that something is going on, and she figures out that it's down to this shawl causing all of these problems. But of course, no one believes her. Lilycat definitely doesn't, because she's pretty much become another person, and even her lovely boyfriend Aidan doesn't quite believe her either. But yeah, the story goes on and I won't spoil the ending, but this was really good fun. I really liked his writing. I thought it was really engaging, and yeah, even though it's not like the most groundbreaking idea for a story, it was well written, it was well paced. I really liked the characters. I thought the friendship between Mackenzie and Lilycat was really genuine, and also Mackenzie's relationship with her boyfriend Aidan also felt really genuine and believable and was really sweet. And yeah, I thought this was just a really good time. I definitely will continue with this series, even though I'm not much of a series reader, but this one I'm enjoying. So yeah, book 1, The Possession, I rated 4 stars. Next up, I read this anthology called The New Flesh, a literary tribute to David Cronenberg, edited by Sam Richard and Brendan Vidito. And this was great. This was another one that I thoroughly enjoyed. I usually find with anthologies that they're quite hit or miss, you know, some will be awesome and some will be duds, but there were no duds in here. It was a really solid collection. Like, the lowest I rated a story was 3 stars, but most of them were higher than that, and I rated the collection as a whole 4 stars. So yeah, it's an excellent read. If you are a fan of David Cronenberg, then yeah, I definitely recommend you pick this up. If you like body horror and some of the themes of Cronenberg's films, like man and machine, sex and death, then yeah, I would recommend checking this one out. I thought it was awesome. There were some really great stories in here. There are a bunch of authors in here that I now want to check out more of their work. And one of my favourites actually was a story by Madeleine Swann, our very own Madeleine Swann here on YouTube. I will leave her linked below in case you're not already following her. But yeah, she is a booktuber and a writer, and she has a really awesome story in here. So yeah, this was a really solid anthology. I thoroughly enjoyed it and I rated it 4 stars. Next up, I read The Nursery by William W. Johnstone. This one is, it's got a lot of anal sex in it, basically. Let's just cut to the chase. Yeah, there's a lot of sexual content in here. It's pretty graphic. There's, yeah, anal sex, a go-go, There's incest, torture, rape. It's kind of all going on in this 80s trash bonanza. So what is it about? It's about a small town that has been taken over by Satan and his minions, and most of the townsfolk have been brainwashed, but there are a few people that haven't, you know, let themselves be taken over. And the main character is this guy in his 40s called Mike. He is an army veteran and he used to live in this town and is now returning there to live. And yeah, as soon as he gets back into town, he kind of realises that things don't feel quite right. And it turns out that, of course, he's the only one that can save the town from Satan. So yeah, it's very cliched and rather predictable. It's over the top and silly in places, but I have to give it credit, it was really quite readable. It was pretty entertaining and was definitely quite a page turner. I was quite happy going along for the ride, and a wild ride it was. So yeah, you can probably guess it's a pretty trashy read, but it was entertaining trash and I rated it 3 stars. Would I read another William Johnstone book? Maybe, maybe not. I feel like if I stumbled upon one, I would totally pick it up, but I'm probably not going to go out of my way to track one down. I think everyone should probably read one William W. Johnstone book just to experience his literary efforts. Okay, and last up I read Nitestone by Hautala. This was my first time reading him and I really quite enjoyed this one, so I'd definitely read more by him. This is about a family, a husband, wife and their young daughter. They move to an old family home and of course things aren't quite right. There's something weird going on. It is almost 600 pages long and I don't think it needed to be quite that long. It could have been, yeah, cut down and tightened up a bit, but it was still a pretty enjoyable read overall. There's quite a lot going on in here. We've got standing stones, like Stonehenge type situation. We've got Native American burial grounds, that old classic. We've got a creepy doll. Definitely didn't look anything like the one on the cover. So even though some of the ideas in here are pretty cliched, it was still a good read. I enjoyed it. I thought it was well written and yeah, the story flowed pretty well. It did have some good creepy moments and some good gory moments and even a couple of emotional moments too. I'm really glad I finally picked this one up. If you've read any other novels by Hautala or even know how to pronounce his last name, because I'm not sure if that's correct, but yeah, let me know if you have any recommendations because I would like to check out some more of his work. And I ended up rating this 3.5 stars. So my favourites of the month, these were 3 books that I rated 4 stars each. We have The Auctioneer by Joan Samson, The Power Book 1, The Possession by Jessie Harris, and The New Flesh, an anthology collection, a tribute to David Cronenberg. So yeah, I don't know if I could recommend just one out of these 3 because they're all really quite different to each other, but I love them all and would definitely recommend them. So that was everything I read in January. I had a pretty decent month overall. Let me know if you've read any of these. I would love to hear your thoughts. February is Women in Horror Month and I am celebrating that by co-hosting the Ladies of Horror Fiction Readathon, so I will leave information for that linked below if you want to go check it out. But yeah, basically reading horror written by women, and there are 5 prompts for that. But yeah, if you don't want to go with those specific prompts, you don't have to. If you just want to pick up one horror book written by a female author during the month, that would be awesome. And I also plan to watch some horror films directed by women, which I'm really looking forward to. So yeah, I will try and do a wrap up on both what I've read and what I've watched at the end of the month, and hopefully will give you some good recommendations. So that's it for today. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and hopefully I will see you again in my next video. Bye!